Okay, wir beginnen diese Stunde mit einer weiteren, wahrscheinlichen strafrechtlichen Untersuchung eines prominenten Kritikers von Präsident Trump. Diesmal ist es der demokratische Kongressabgeordnete Eric Swalwell aus Kalifornien. Er muss sich mit einer Untersuchung des Justizministeriums auseinandersetzen. Wie am selben Tag bekannt gegeben wurde, waren die Anwälte von zwei anderen Trump-Kritikern wieder vor Gericht und argumentierten, dass ihre strafrechtliche Anklage fallen gelassen werden sollte. Scott McFarlane berichtet für uns über alles, wie er es schon seit einiger Zeit tut. Scott, guten Morgen.
Hey, Tony. Ein Beamter der Trump-Regierung für Wohnungswesen erhebt die gleichen Anschuldigungen gegen den Kongressabgeordneten Swalwell, die die Regierung gegen andere politische Kritiker des Präsidenten erhoben hat. Er stellt in Frage, ob der Demokrat aus Kalifornien bei der Aufnahme einer Hypothek in Washington, D.C. Betrug begangen hat. Sie haben das Justizministerium offiziell um eine Untersuchung gebeten. Swalwell, der in Trumps erster Amtszeit als Impeachment-Manager gegen Trump tätig war, bestritt jegliches Fehlverhalten und bezeichnete die Anschuldigungen als politisch motiviert. Er sagte, dass
Okay, so everything is happening at once, and it's absolutely insane. Congress is moving at unprecedented speed to file new impeachment papers against Trump. Like emergency sessions, rapid drafting, immediate action kind of speed. And at the exact same time, a federal judge just issued an emergency order authorizing the freezing and seizure of all Trump's assets. Everything. Trump Tower, Mar-a-Lago, golf courses, hotels, bank accounts, business holdings. All of it frozen and subject to seizure. These two massive developments happening simultaneously represents one of the deepest legal and political crises in American presidential history. This isn't one scandal or one legal problem. This is total systemic collapse of Trump's legal, financial, and political position all at the same time. The impeachment papers cite high crimes and misdemeanors: obstruction of justice, financial fraud, abuse of power. These aren't vague accusations. These are specific charges based on documented evidence and court findings. Lawmakers are rushing multiple new articles of impeachment for immediate action on the House floor, not slow-walking it, not going through weeks of committee hearings, rushing it, emergency sessions, bipartisan calls for rapid accountability. Capitol Hill is in absolute turmoil trying to process and act on everything at once. Meanwhile, the emergency asset seizure order is being enforced right now. Federal judge issuing the order. Prosecutors moving to freeze everything Trump owns. The order prohibits any sale, transfer, or leverage of properties. Trump can't move assets to protect them, can't sell properties to raise cash, can't use holdings as collateral for loans. Everything is locked down. And prosecutors are authorized to begin actually seizing assets to satisfy financial judgments from fraud and obstruction cases, not just freezing them, taking them, liquidating them, using the proceeds to pay what Trump owes. New York Attorney General Letitia James is leading the enforcement, and she's not playing around. She's vowing that no one is above the law, not even a former president. And she's backing that up with aggressive action. Financial institutions immediately complied with the freeze order. Banks froze Trump Organization accounts. Creditors reassessed their exposure. Wall Street moved instantly to comply because nobody wants to be accused of helping Trump evade court orders. The economic and reputational strain on Trump and his organization is enormous and immediate. The dual nature of this crisis is what makes it so unprecedented. Either one of these developments alone would be massive news. Impeachment of a president or asset seizure of a former president's entire business empire. But both happening simultaneously, that's a constitutional and economic earthquake. Trump is facing political removal through impeachment at the same time his financial empire is being dismantled by court order. There's no historical precedent for this. Nothing comparable in American history. Trump's legal and business teams are scrambling, trying to halt asset seizures through emergency appeals, trying to delay impeachment through political maneuvering. But wave after wave of enforcement actions and legal filings keep coming. They're getting overwhelmed. Can't keep up with the volume and speed of actions against them. Every time they respond to one crisis, two more emerge. It's legal and political whack-a-mole, and they're losing badly. Capitol Hill reaction shows this isn't just partisan politics anymore. House leaders from both parties are saying these steps are necessary to restore rule of law and uphold constitutional standards. Even some Republicans who've defended Trump for years are saying the evidence is too overwhelming to ignore, that the constitutional violations are too serious. That action must be taken. Trump's remaining defenders are struggling to mount credible defense amid overwhelming evidence and judicial condemnation. The usual talking points about witch hunts and political persecution ring hollow when judges are issuing emergency orders and bipartisan coalitions are forming for impeachment. The immediate crisis atmosphere is palpable. Emergency sessions in Congress. Emergency court orders. Emergency enforcement actions. Everything is urgent. Everything is moving fast. Nobody knows exactly what happens next because we're in uncharted territory. The constitutional mechanisms for removing a president, the legal processes for seizing assets, the political dynamics of bipartisan impeachment, all of it is being tested simultaneously in ways that create genuine uncertainty about outcomes. The test for the presidency and American legal system is profound. Can Congress actually remove a president through impeachment when they have the will and evidence? Can courts actually seize a president's assets despite his power and wealth? Can the system hold the most powerful person accountable when that person fights back with every resource? These are fundamental questions about whether American democracy and rule of law actually work when tested. And we're about to find out. The days ahead will determine Trump's fate. Whether he gets impeached and convicted. Whether his assets get seized and sold. Whether he faces criminal prosecution. Whether he retains any political or economic power. But beyond Trump personally, this determines the legal limits of presidential power in times of scandal. Whether the presidency itself is subject to law or operates outside it. Whether wealth and political position provide immunity or whether accountability applies to everyone. The stakes extend far beyond one person to fundamental questions about American governance. The speed of everything is what's most striking. Congress rushing impeachment papers. Judges issuing emergency orders. Prosecutors moving immediately to freeze and seize. Financial institutions instantly complying. There's no slow deliberation. No lengthy processes. Just rapid action driven by urgency and seriousness of the situation. That speed itself signals how dire things have become. When institutions move this fast, it means they believe the crisis requires immediate response. That waiting or going through normal procedures would allow too much damage or evasion. All right, let's get into the specific details of the impeachment articles and the asset seizure order because both are complex and consequential. Starting with impeachment. The articles cite high crimes and misdemeanors, which is the constitutional standard for removing a president. But what specific conduct are they alleging? Obstruction of justice appears to be a major focus. Trump's defiance of court orders, his attempts to hide documents and evidence, his witness intimidation, all of it documented and proven in various proceedings. The pattern of obstruction is so clear and so extensive that it forms a basis for impeachment. Financial fraud is the second major charge. The civil fraud judgment that led to the asset seizure found Trump systematically inflated asset values to get loans and deflated them to reduce taxes. That's fraud. It's been proven in court. And using that proven fraud as basis for impeachment is straightforward. A president who committed massive financial fraud has violated the public trust and constitutional obligations. That's exactly what high crimes and misdemeanors was designed to cover. Abuse of power is the third major allegation. Trump using his position to pressure state officials to change election results. Attempting to use the military inappropriately. Defying congressional oversight. Making decisions based on personal interest rather than national interest. The pattern of abuse is extensive and documented. Each instance individually might not rise to impeachment, but the cumulative pattern shows someone who consistently abused presidential power for personal benefit. The speed of Congress moving on this is remarkable and telling. Usually impeachment takes months. Investigations, hearings, witness testimony, report writing, committee votes, then floor votes. But they're compressing all of that into days or weeks. Emergency sessions suggest they believe waiting is dangerous. That Trump needs to be removed quickly before he can do more damage. The urgency implies they have information about ongoing threats or schemes that require immediate action. The bipartisan nature of support is what makes this different from previous Trump impeachments. In past impeachments, Republicans largely stuck with Trump, provided him political cover. made removal impossible despite Democratic House majorities. But this time, some Republicans are breaking ranks, saying the evidence is too strong, the constitutional violations too clear. That party loyalty doesn't require defending the indefensible. That changes the political calculation dramatically because conviction in the Senate becomes possible if enough Republicans vote yes. The asset seizure order is equally consequential and unprecedented. The judge found that emergency action was necessary because Trump has a pattern of hiding assets to avoid judgments. That normal processes would give him time to move money offshore, transfer properties to shell companies, or otherwise evade enforcement. So freeze everything immediately. Prevent any transactions. Then prosecutors can methodically seize what's needed to satisfy the judgment. The properties covered are staggering in scope and value. Trump Tower in Manhattan might be worth hundreds of millions. Mar-a-Lago is valued at over $100 million, though Trump has claimed it's worth much more. Golf courses across multiple states collectively worth hundreds of millions. Hotels and resorts adding more hundreds of millions. Bank accounts and business holdings. Adding it all up, the total value of frozen assets is probably in the billions. That's an enormous amount of wealth subject to government seizure. The prohibition on sales, transfers, or leveraging means Trump is effectively broke despite owning billions in assets. He can't access the equity in his properties. Can't sell anything to raise cash. Can't use properties as collateral for loans. All the wealth is there on paper, but completely inaccessible. For someone whose self-image and public persona is built on wealth and deal-making, this is psychological devastation beyond just the financial impact. The authorization for prosecutors to begin seizing assets is where it gets real. Not just freezing, but taking. Prosecutors can go to properties, take possession, and arrange for sale. Trump might literally be forcibly removed from Mar-a-Lago if it gets seized and sold. His businesses might be shut down and liquidated. The Trump brand could be completely erased from his properties after they're sold to new owners. That's not theoretical future possibility. That's authorized and beginning now. Letitia James leading enforcement is significant because she's been Trump's nemesis for years. She investigated his business practices, built the civil fraud case, secured the massive judgment, and now she's personally overseeing enforcement of that judgment through asset seizure. She has both the legal authority and personal motivation to see this through completely. She's not going to accept partial payment or negotiate favorable terms. She wants full enforcement, and she has court backing to get it. The immediate compliance by financial institutions shows how seriously Wall Street is taking this. Banks don't want any accusation of helping Trump evade court orders, so they freeze accounts immediately, sometimes over-complying to be safe. Credit lines get pulled even if they're not explicitly covered by the order just to avoid any appearance of helping Trump access funds. The financial industry moving in lockstep to cut Trump off is its own form of enforcement beyond what the court ordered. The economic strain on Trump Organization is immediate and severe. Can't access accounts means can't make payroll, can't pay vendors, can't cover operating expenses. Businesses start shutting down. Employees get laid off. Vendors stop providing services when invoices aren't being paid. The cascade of economic consequences hits fast. Within days or weeks, the Trump Organization could be functionally bankrupt despite owning billions in assets. Because illiquid assets don't pay bills. The reputational damage is permanent regardless of how legal proceedings resolve. Trump has been found guilty of fraud by a court. His assets are being seized. His businesses are collapsing. The brand is toxic. Even if somehow Trump wins on appeal and gets assets unfrozen, who's going to do business with him after this? Who's going to stay at Trump hotels or join Trump clubs or buy Trump-branded anything? The reputation Trump spent decades building is destroyed, and reputation once lost is almost impossible to fully recover. The convergence of impeachment and asset seizure creates unique pressure on Trump. Usually politicians facing impeachment can use their wealth to fight back. Hire lawyers, fund political operations, maintain influence through donations. But with assets frozen, Trump can't do that. He can't pay expensive lawyers, can't fund political ads, can't donate to allies. His ability to fight impeachment is crippled by the asset seizure. and his ability to fight asset seizure is crippled by the political chaos of impeachment. Each crisis makes the other worse in a negative feedback loop. The constitutional questions about seizing a sitting or former president's assets are real. The Fifth Amendment protects against deprivation of property without due process. Trump's lawyers will argue he hasn't received due process. That emergency seizure without exhausting appeals violates his rights. But the courts have apparently decided that Trump's pattern of evasion and defiance justifies emergency action. That due process doesn't require giving Trump unlimited time to hide assets before enforcement. That's a significant legal determination with broader implications. The international implications are serious too. Trump has assets in multiple countries: Scotland golf courses, Ireland properties, other international holdings. Will foreign governments cooperate with U.S. seizure orders? That's complicated by international law and sovereignty issues. Trump might try to move assets to countries that won't cooperate with U.S. courts. But the global financial system is interconnected. Banks in other countries don't want to be seen as helping someone evade U.S. court orders because it could affect their ability to do business in American markets. The political impact on Trump's remaining supporters is going to be significant. Some will see this as persecution, proof that the deep state will use any tool to destroy Trump. They'll rally around him harder. But others might start to waver. When your assets are being seized for fraud and Congress is moving to impeach based on documented crimes, at some point even loyal supporters start questioning whether continued support is wise. The cracks in Trump's base might finally start appearing in ways they haven't before. Okay, so let's break down what happens next and what the possible outcomes are. First, the impeachment process in the House moves fast if they're determined. Articles can be drafted, debated, and voted on in days if there's political will. If Democrats have the votes and some Republicans join them, Trump could be impeached within a week or two. That's the House side. The Senate is where it gets complicated because conviction requires 2/3 vote. Do enough Republicans vote to convict? That depends on whether they believe the evidence is overwhelming enough to justify removal and whether they think their political survival depends on distancing from Trump. Second, the asset seizures proceed in stages. First, the freeze, which has already happened. Then inventory and valuation. Prosecutors need to catalog all Trump's properties and determine values. Then prioritize what to seize based on what's easiest to liquidate and most valuable. Trump Tower might be first because it's a single high-value property in a major market. Mar-a-Lago might be complicated by Trump living there. Golf courses might take longer because they're harder to value and sell, but the process is starting and moving forward. Third, Trump's legal options to stop either impeachment or seizure are limited. He can't stop impeachment through courts because that's a political process. His only hope there is political pressure and Republican loyalty. On asset seizure, he can appeal, but appeals take time and judges seem impatient with his delay tactics. Emergency stays are difficult to get. He'd need to show immediate, irreparable harm and likelihood of success on appeal. That's a high bar when he's already lost the underlying fraud case. Fourth, the financial impact on Trump personally and his organization is catastrophic. Businesses shutting down, properties being seized, accounts frozen, legal bills unpaid, the empire collapsing. Even if Trump somehow survives politically, his business career is over. The brand is destroyed. The assets are being liquidated. There's no coming back from this economically. Trump might end up genuinely poor after owing billions. That's a complete reversal of fortune. Fifth, the political fallout extends beyond Trump to everyone associated with him. Republicans who defended him face questions about whether they enabled a criminal. Donors who funded him face scrutiny about whether they knew about fraud. Business partners face legal liability for participating in fraudulent schemes. The circle of people affected by Trump's collapse is huge and getting wider. Sixth, the precedent this sets is enormous. If a president can be impeached based on fraud findings from civil court, that expands the grounds for impeachment significantly. If a president's assets can be seized while still in office or shortly after, that establishes courts have power over even the most powerful political figures. These precedents affect future presidents and how they behave, knowing that financial crimes could lead to asset seizure and political crimes could lead to immediate impeachment. Seventh, the test of American institutions is happening in real time. Can Congress impeach and convict when there's genuine evidence and will? Can courts enforce judgments against the powerful when they resist? Can the financial system cut off someone with political connections when ordered? These are fundamental questions about whether the system works. And we're getting answers through this crisis. Eighth, the human cost is significant. Thousands of Trump Organization employees facing unemployment. Vendors facing unpaid invoices. Communities where Trump properties are major employers facing economic disruption. Innocent people suffering because of Trump's fraud and the enforcement actions against him. The system should find ways to protect innocent victims while still holding Trump accountable, but that's complicated in practice. Ninth, Trump's psychological state is going to be crucial. How does he respond to losing everything? Does he become more erratic and dangerous? Does he accept defeat? Does he try even more desperate measures to hold on to power and wealth? Trump's psychology and how he handles catastrophic loss will influence how this plays out. And based on his history, expecting him to go quietly seems unrealistic. 10th, the international reaction is going to range from schadenfreude to concern. Adversaries might celebrate American chaos. Allies might worry about American stability. The global implications of an American president being impeached while his assets are seized are significant for American prestige and leadership. How we handle this crisis affects how the world sees American democracy and institutions. Look, here's the reality. Congress is rushing impeachment while Trump's assets are being seized. That's happening right now. Not theoretical future, current crisis. The legal system and political system are both acting against Trump simultaneously. He's fighting wars on multiple fronts with diminishing resources. His political power is under attack through impeachment. His financial power is being destroyed through asset seizure. His legal defenses are collapsing as lawyers quit or demand payment he can't provide. The unprecedented speed of everything reflects how serious the situation is. Institutions don't move this fast unless they believe the danger requires immediate response. Congress compressing months of impeachment process into weeks. Courts issuing emergency orders before normal procedures. Financial institutions immediately freezing accounts. That speed itself is evidence of crisis. The dual nature of political and economic collapse is mutually reinforcing. The impeachment weakens Trump politically, which makes it harder to pressure allies to protect his assets. The asset seizure weakens Trump financially, which makes it harder to fight impeachment through political operations and legal challenges. Each crisis feeds the other in ways that make both worse. The test for rule of law is whether Trump faces actual consequences or whether he escapes again through wealth and power. Previous scandals Trump survived partly because he could afford endless legal battles and maintain political influence through money. But with assets frozen and Congress moving to impeach, those escape routes are closing. He can't fund legal battles, can't maintain influence through donations, can't use wealth as shield against accountability. That makes this different from everything before. The historical significance is obvious. If Trump gets impeached and convicted while his assets are seized, it establishes that accountability applies even to presidents, that the most powerful face consequences when they commit crimes, that the system works when institutions have the will to make it work. That's important beyond Trump. That affects future presidents and how they behave. It reestablishes norms about presidential accountability that Trump violated throughout his time in office. But if Trump somehow survives this, if impeachment fails or asset seizures get overturned, it establishes the opposite. That sufficient political support and aggressive legal tactics can overcome even overwhelming evidence. That the powerful can evade accountability. That the system doesn't work when challenged by someone willing to fight dirty enough. That would be devastating for rule of law and future accountability. The days ahead are genuinely uncertain. Nobody knows if impeachment succeeds. Nobody knows how far asset seizures go. Nobody knows how Trump responds. Nobody knows how institutions hold up under the stress. We're in uncharted territory, making this up as we go. The only certainty is that what happens matters enormously. For Trump, for the presidency, for American democracy, for rule of law. The crisis that's unfolding right now with Congress rushing impeachment papers while Trump's assets get seized under emergency order is defining. And how it resolves will be studied for generations as either the moment American institutions proved they could hold the powerful accountable or the moment we discovered they couldn't.